Hello and welcome to a video on the zygomatic branch of the facial nerve. First, I'm just going to take you through the facial nerve and a few points of information about that. So the facial nerve is the seventh cranial nerve, which you'll see in some textbooks denoted as C for cranial, N for nerve, V, I, which is the Roman number for 7. Its primary responsibility is to supply the muscles of facial expression with motor innervation. It has 5 main branches, so it has the temporal, the zygomatic, which is number 2, the buccal, which is number 3, the mandibular, which is number 4, and the cervical, which is number 5. And it exits the skull through the stylomastoid foramen, which is located just roughly right here on the diagram. So this diagram has got lots of muscles on it, and these are the muscles that we're going to be going through. But in this video, we are just going to be focusing on the temporal branch of the facial nerve, which I will outline in dark blue for us here. It's this branch right here. So we will go through the muscles it supplies, those muscles insertion, where they arise from, and their actions in which they carry out in facial expression. So let's move on to the first muscle, which is orbicularis oculi. If you can't tell from the name, orbicularis oculi is a muscle that orbits or surrounds the eye, the orbit. Oculi, if you think of binoculars, oculars. These are just little ways that help me remember all the names of all these different muscles. It's quite good to associate muscles with where they originate, where they insert, what actions they carry out. So in this case, orbicularis orbits, oculi the eye. So it receives its motor innervation from the temporal branch of the facial nerve. Spell motor right. And from the temporal branch. And orbicularis oculi is a broad elliptical muscle. As I said, it circles the eye, and it acts as a sphincter muscle and acts to ocular reflexes to close and open the eyelids. Continuous action of this muscle actually causes the lateral parts of the eye to crease. Now, if you're a slightly older person, this can cause the appearance of crow's feet wrinkles. So if you squint your eyes a lot, make sure you use your anti-wrinkle cream. So now we're going to talk about the frontal belly of occipitofrontalis, which I will outline in purple. Now, if you imagine occipitofrontalis, it's exactly as its name suggests. It is found on the frontal bone, and it's also found on the occipital bone. So there is an anterior and a posterior belly. So this is the frontal, the anterior belly of occipitofrontalis. The posterior belly is found back on the occipital bone. Like all the muscles that we're going to mention in this video, it gets its motor supply from the temporal branch of the facial nerve, CNVII, so it gets its motor supply from here. It is a thin sheet-like muscle that forms the action of raising your eyebrows and your forehead, causing someone to look surprised. So if you imagine the muscle pulls up here, and if your eyebrows were about here, it would pull up, making you look surprised. Extensive use of this muscle will cause wrinkling in your forehead. So if you imagine Gordon Ramsay, he has very extensive use of this muscle as he has very, very deep wrinkles in his forehead. Excuse my pronunciation on this. This muscle is corrugator supericuli. Now this muscle I've had to draw in because it is a deeper structure than orbicularis oculi. So it is found here. I'll just outline it harder in purple. And it receives its motor supply from the temporal branch of the facial nerve. It is a pyramidal shaped muscle found medially and deep to the frontal belly of occipitofrontalis and orbicularis oculi. It moves medially, so if you imagine the muscle here, it moves down the way, so inferiorly and medially, mainly a medial movement, to create the facial expression of frowning. So that is the muscle that gives you a frowny face. Corrugator supericuli causes this. Now we are moving on to the auricular muscles. Now the auricular muscles aren't very active in humans. Auricularis superior can cause the ears to move up and down, to wiggle your ears. But in this slide, we're going to be talking about auricularis anterior, which is considered a muscle of facial expression given by motor innervation by the temporal branch of the facial nerve. I will outline it for you, or color it in rather, in red. It's located just here. So auricularis means ear, or auriculus means ear. Anterior means it's anterior to the ear. Just if you need to remember why it's called that, and if you see it pinned in the dissection, that's a good way to make a guess, is guess by its location. So it receives its motor supply, as I said, from the temporal branch of CNVII facial nerve, the 7th cranial nerve. It is actually the smallest of the 3 extrinsic muscles of the ear, and its thin fibers stretch anteriorly. So as you can see here, those that are in green, they go anterior on the face, so it's anterior fiber, and they attach to the helix of the ear. Next, we're going to talk about auricularis superior. Again, auricular meaning ear, and superior meaning it's above the ear, or superior to the ear. So I'll just color that in red for us. It's this large muscle here. It's actually the largest of the 3 auricular muscles, and is the one that causes the action of wriggling your ears. Though mostly, in most people, it doesn't have an action at all. It does get its motor supply from the temporal branch of the cranial nerve, number 7, the facial nerve, CNVII. Like all the other muscles of facial expression, apart from the next one we're going to talk about, and I'm only mentioning it in this video as it is the third part of the 3 auricular muscles. So let's move on to that last one, and the posterior auricular muscle. Auricularis posterior, I'll just color in for you in red. It is the middle sized muscle of the three auricular muscles. So the largest is superior and the smallest is anterior. Now, auricular posterior is special as it is not supplied by the temporal branch of the facial nerve. It is actually supplied by the posterior auricular branch of the facial nerve. Now, like the other two muscles, this muscle does not have any action in humans. So there's no action performed by this muscle, as these muscles are relatively small and inactive in humans, but in animals you can tell that it does have a lot of action, as a cat or a dog can move their ears backwards and forwards to be able to hear sounds from behind and front and laterally as well. So in this video we went over the temporal branch of the facial nerve being the 7th cranial nerve, denoted in textbooks as CNVII for the 7th cranial nerve. It supplies motor innervation to the muscles of facial expression, and the muscles we went over in this video were orbicularis oculi, is the muscle that goes all the way around the eyes. This diagram isn't accurate, so I would encourage you to go and look at the models and look at previous drawings just to get a better representation, but the 3D models is probably best as it is being outlined and drawn on the models just so you can see. Next we have the frontal belly of occipito frontalis, so we'll just draw that in green here. This is just to show you quickly a anterior representation of the muscles rather than in the previous drawings, which is a lateral representation of the muscles. And all these muscles are normally found bilaterally, so on both sides of the face. Next we have got the auricular muscles, which I will draw in purple. We have got the anterior one, anterior, the superior one, which will branch out like that. Very, very small in comparison to temporalis, which is a large muscle found on that area of the face as well. Then we have the posterior one, anterior, superior, and posterior. And then last but not least, we have corrugator suprauriculi, which I will now draw in orange, which is located as a deep structure here and here. So that's it for this video. Please go and view the models, which can be found on the other page, and try out the quizzes, and then try out the final quiz, which will be on all the muscles and the innervation mentioned in the previous videos and models. Thank you.